Hello, friends. Today, the working title of this episode will be The Pressure to Perform, Breaking Free from Perfectionism and Goal Setting. Now, I wanted to talk today about performance pressure, and it's because I have a very intimate relationship with feeling pressure to perform and kind of being obsessed with setting goals and measuring them and achieving them and kind of basing my identity around them. Before starting the episode, I took some time to reflect on why I am the way that I am, and I would be reflecting for a lifetime if I wanted to complete it. But what I walked away with for today was that growing up as a gifted kid and being in different gifted programs, I feel like it's a blessing and a curse, because when people see certain talent and abilities in us, they feel inclined to push us because they see that potential and they want to help us maximize it. Maybe they even see a bit of themselves in us. And so even though their intentions are noble, it can start to teach you to have this sort of unhealthy relationship with goals. And the end result is identifying with goals. Whether you achieve them or you fail at achieving them, that becomes your identity. And so for me, it has been a constant journey, probably since I started the podcast. Part of the reason I started it is to, kind of get to this place where achievements are wonderful and they should be celebrated, but I am not just the sum of my achievements. My worth, my value, and who I am is not just only on what I do. I and you, we have an intrinsic value, even when we are doing nothing more than just existing. So what I want to talk about today is just a little more getting into that, and to just really ask the question, how can we stay in a place where we are goal achievers or ambitious, but without just simply reducing ourselves down to a list of goals and whether we check them off or not? I think the first thing that we need to acknowledge is that there is a really big weight on us, these expectations. And what I want to first stop and talk about is imposter syndrome. It's connected. I want to say that I think a lot of us got it wrong when we talked about imposter syndrome. I think that if you are any sort of person in a setting where you are underrepresented or disadvantaged in some way, like myself being a woman, being Black, to suggest that I am maybe overextending and overachieving because I have imposter syndrome sort of reduces my experience to a me problem and something internal, when I think we need to acknowledge the fact that when we enter these spaces as women or as some sort of Black person or a person of color or just someone that is different from the norm in that setting, the number of microaggressions that you experience sometimes just coming into this space, and the fact that people will continue to do that and even become bolder once they know you. I can think back to previous jobs where I had such a positive experience during the interview and was so excited to start that job. And then I get there on my first day, I'm dressed, I'm ready to go, I'm introducing myself to people, and they're skipping over anything important about me and asking, well, what school did you go to? And I remember distinctly one person saying, we don't normally hire from that school. And there was just so much about the tone that they said so much without even saying it. And so what I just feel like when we would talk in the past, maybe 10, 15 years ago, about imposter syndrome, it was almost like this suggestion that like, hey, you just need to get your self-esteem up and that will just solve the problem. To me, a lot of the expectations on us, the external ones anyway, it sort of matters. There's an image that we need to have going into these spaces, whether it's academia, the corporate space. It could even be just society as a whole, your neighborhood, your children's soccer game. When you're in these spaces, people have expectations of what productivity looks like, They have expectations of what it looks like to be a valuable contributor. And if you do not fit the image that they have, you will be locked out. You will be the last considered when being picked for the team, whether it is academic or career. And not being picked isn't just about some silly thing like, oh, they didn't like me, my self-esteem. It could literally be your livelihood. It matters if you are likable and someone that people trust. And so many of us know that we're going in, whether we love ourselves or not, there is an expectation, and that expectation comes with a lot of pressure, because if we try to perform and we fail, we might end up without a job, and it might affect our stability. And so I want to acknowledge that, because I think just reducing it down to maybe you just need to go in the mirror and say some affirmations isn't the correct way to look at it, because this whole thing is a game and perceptions really matter. And I think people can judge you based on how you look, what your posture is, your tone, whether or not you contribute to the small talk conversations that happen in the in-between. There are so many factors, and I could go on and on. I think many of you know it. It doesn't matter how long you've been working, whether it's a month or 2 decades. I'm sure you've seen it and you've experienced it. And so some of that pressure to perform and to have actual stats to back it up is coming externally, and we have some pressure to perform. But there's also internal pressure, and that's where the whole perfectionism comes in, and also the idea of imposter syndrome. Even though I don't really like that concept because I feel like it's a little too narrowly focused, I do think it's connected to the internal expectations we have. And we have a number of reasons why we put those expectations on ourselves. I know for me, I don't really have a desire to control the people around me, and I very much acknowledge the fact that I can't control people around me. But by setting my standards high for myself and setting goals for myself, it does give me a feeling of control and a bit of autonomy, because it's like, well, I don't know what tomorrow will bring, but as for me, I know what I'm going to do. And it's not always a terrible thing. As we are speaking right now, it's a couple days before I will post this podcast. It's evening time. I have finished work. I have finished my workouts. I have eaten dinner. But to prepare myself for tomorrow, I packed my lunch already, and my lunch and breakfast is already in a bag. And what that makes me feel like is, well, even if I were to accidentally sleep in tomorrow, I know that I have those things packed and ready to go, and my day will be easier. So sometimes our intentions are very good. We're setting our standards and expectations of ourselves high because we know so many things can go wrong in this world, and we also know that people are unreliable. However, there have been times when I was just too tired to meal prep and to pack my lunch, and I had to go down to the cafeteria and just, wing it. And there are days when I was really hard on myself. I really contemplated just skipping lunch altogether because it didn't fit with my diet plan for the week. And I think that's where that lack of balance can come in. And that's why we need to reflect on these things to say, is there a point where me setting these goals and metrics is becoming detrimental? Am I becoming so obsessed with tracking how I'm progressing on this thing, whether it is building your savings account, dropping some inches of your waistline, preparing for moving into a new home, whatever it is it getting in the way of me being present in my life? And if it's getting in the way, that is when we need to maybe recalibrate a little bit, because I know for me, it just leads to burnout. And that burnout is not just fatigue. It comes with a lot of emotions, sadness, a feeling of loss of autonomy of my own life, a little bit of anger, regret, resentment. There's a lack of clarity. So the very basic things that I must do, I'm sometimes not doing them well. And so knowing that the end result of obsessing over metrics is going to be me performing even worse is my motivation to stay in balance. And so as an example, I've been a lot more heavy on my wellness routine. There's certain goals that I have for myself, not just for my physique, but how I want to feel and just to build strength and all these things. And it's leading me to get back to where I'm counting calories, I'm counting my protein, I'm making more of my food from scratch. And although there's joy in it, I'm also trying to get to that place where I can just let go every now and again. So certain days of the week, I will just randomly just be like, I'm not counting anything today. I'm just going to let it go, because whatever I'm doing for my wellness journey, if it requires me to just be strict like this for my whole life, then I've done something wrong. At some point, I should be able to moderately monitor what I'm doing and how I'm living, and that should be enough. All of the tracking and measuring is supposed to just kind of be like training wheels. It gives you a concept and an idea of how to do things. And then after a while, that becomes second nature. And as you become more experienced with what you need and how to get to your goals, you can adjust. I also think just being so obsessed with metrics, I think that it can lead to feeling anxious and feeling worthless when we somehow don't check off our goals. And it could also just lead us to feeling overall just bad about ourselves. Like if someone were to say, hey, I've just noticed you making so many changes. I think you're doing a great job. If we're in that place of just burning ourselves out, we will hear those compliments and we will hear those affirmations and we'll just not even believe it, because it'll become this all or nothing approach, which is, I haven't done anything if I haven't done XYZ. Now, nothing that I shared should give you the impression that setting goals is a bad thing. But sometimes our mindset just needs a tiny bit of a shift so that we can still achieve our goals without that being the only little tiny narrow focus in our lives. So I used the diet as an example. Beyond those numbers, beyond counting your carbs, your fat, your protein, your calories, what would fulfillment look like for you? I will give you the tiniest, most silly example, but I felt so good. I was carrying groceries from the car, and it was those like larger paper grocery bags from Trader Joe's. And I picked up 2 bags and I still had like 4 more left in my trunk, but it's a little bit of a walk from my car to the front door. So I thought, I'll just carry the 2, I'll come back. Well, as I was carrying it, as I got to the halfway point, I thought, these are kind of heavy. And I had done like an upper body workout that day, but it wasn't so heavy to the point where I had to stop and put them down. So when I finally got in the house, I was still curious about it. How heavy are these? They feel heavier than a normal grocery bag would. They pack these bags all the way full. And I did get a lot of kind of heavier items, root veggies and different juices and, all kinds of stuff. So I went ahead and brought both bags and put them on my scale. And one bag was about 20 pounds and the other was around maybe like 16. So it was like the total ended up being like just under 40 pounds. Maybe it was like 36 or 37 pounds. Now, the thing with weight, it's not so much how heavy is the weight. It's kind of more so how heavy is it and how long do you have to carry it? But that was a little trip. And I know a time when I would have definitely struggled and I would have felt it. And I would have been like, when am I putting these bags down? So for me, that was an achievement. It wasn't just the number on the scale or looking back at my food diary and saying, oh, I was in a calorie deficit for 3 weeks straight with no mistakes. It was, this weight training stuff is making a huge difference. I can feel the load that I'm bearing, but I don't feel like I'm shaking or wavering at all. It just feels easy. And I want to feel like this more often because there's lots of daily tasks that we do that are, can even lead to an injury, especially as we age. So me finding moments like that when it comes to building a wellness routine, that felt better to me than anything else that I've experienced in weeks. So as I'm talking, I hope you also are thinking about some goals that you've had and maybe some mini milestones before the goals. How did it feel when you got there? How did it feel when you realized you got there? I want you to just take a moment to think about that feeling. that maybe dopamine boost to just be like, wow, I achieved something and I feel really good about myself. And I'm not even all the way done yet. I'm not even to my final goal, but something about this moment feels like change and it feels refreshing. And I guess the mini milestones in a way is kind of focusing on the journey and not just the outcome. And sometimes that gets frustrating to me when I'm in a place of impatience with my journey and I really, really need that outcome. I don't want to hear like, oh, it's just about the journey. But I think wellness is a great example of why the journey is important. We are going to go through different circumstances in our life. Our weight will go up and down. Our blood test results will go up and down. Different things happen and we, maybe become too busy. We change our regimen. We're in a different environment. Focusing on the process and the journey can give us all kinds of clues in case we need to come back through this journey again. And that's something that I'm realizing is that's why the journey is beautiful, because you might find yourself there again. And I kind of touched on this earlier, and this is kind of related. It is related to perfectionism, and it's just having an all or nothing type of thinking. This is me all day. I will confess, I will call myself out. I'm very much often like, well, if I didn't do this, then I didn't do anything. And it's a really hard mindset to come out of, because when I have set my eyes on a certain goal, let's say it's finances, whatever that end result is something that I have decided that I need, especially if it's regarding like my future. So not achieving it feels dire. But what I'm learning to tell myself is, as long as I'm still breathing, there is still time. Although I don't have all the answers, and I'm admittedly still working through this myself, I do feel that I'm a lot more aware of that, and I tend to kind of push back on anything that is pushing me further into that mindset. So I'm not the biggest fan right now of like just obsessively reading through self-help books, because I feel like, especially the ones that are like how to achieve your lifetime goals in 10 years or less. I'm exaggerating with the title, but these books that promise that you will achieve everything you've ever wanted to achieve, and all you have to do is follow these steps. I know that it's going to lead me to feeling fatigued, upset, and more than likely disappointed. And so I have been focusing my energy more on building my imagination, because a person who has a powerful imagination can come up with solutions for anything. So instead of reading books and just being of that mindset of like track your metrics, always set your goals, look back at your goals, I'm thinking about how can I expand my mind? Because the more I do that, the easier it will be to come up with ideas to get where I need to go. So I give myself breaks from analyzing everything. I have apps that track stuff. I have my own little spreadsheets. I'm an engineer. I'm sure you're not surprised. I give myself a break from doing those things, and I try to step back and just look at it from more of a bird's eye view. It's not that I'm ever losing sight of what my goals are, but I'm just stepping back to really look at the bigger picture and not zooming in on little tiny numbers. The next thing is something that I tell you guys all the time, which is to practice grace, giving yourself grace, having compassion for yourself. What you have done for today is enough for today. So there are days when my apartment is sparkling clean. There are other days where the sink is stacked up with dishes and I'm not going to get to it until the morning or even the evening after work. And while it isn't ideal, what was ideal in that moment was for me to unplug, and I honored that. And that is something that's worth celebrating. And I hope that you will give yourself an opportunity to do the same. I also just feel like a list of achievements is not guaranteeing for us to feel a sense of joy. And more than I want to achieve, I want to be happy. I want to actually feel peaceful, to feel joyful, and to feel like my life has more purpose in it than for me to just be working. I also think mindfulness comes in with all of this discussion. When we're so goal oriented, it takes our eyes off the present moment and it has our eyes on a future that doesn't belong to us just yet. It's good to prepare for the future, but we should be living in the present moment. And by living in the present moment, we have a higher chance of actually feeling joyful and feeling fulfilled in our lives. Wow, this is a longer episode. I haven't done a long episode like this in a while, but let me wrap up. Thank you so much. If you're still listening, thank you for listening. I just want to encourage you to assess the way you approach your goals. If you're not burned out, you're nowhere near burned out, then I think what you're doing is working, and that's great. Keep going. It's okay to stop and assess every now and again, but if it's working for you, then keep going. But if you are starting to feel that sense of dread when you do certain activities, or even just waking up in the morning, or when people ask you, how is this, and this going? Because you shared goals with them and now you're like, oh, here we go. Now I have to talk about it again. It might be time to reassess. And once you reassess, it is okay to tell the people in your life that you're not measuring your goals that way anymore. You're not taking that approach anymore. You're trying something different. That is a healthy boundary that you can set. And I think people around you will find it refreshing, and people that are meant to be in your life will absolutely respect it. So thank you so much for listening to my reflections. I hope that if you currently are burdened with just feeling like you are not achieving what you should be achieving, that you will take a moment to acknowledge your worth and your value just for existing. You are so much more than the things that you do and the things that you achieve. Thanks for listening.